All right, it's almost time for the test, and there's really nothing new to teach you. This third test is a combination of the first two. You're going to have to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. What tricks students up on this test a lot of times is the vocabulary. So one of the vocabulary issues is with banking. When you have a bank account, if you add money to your account, they don't just say you added money into your account usually. They say you deposited money into your account. So if you see the word deposit in a bank account problem, you got to add to your total. That's a good thing. The total amount in your bank is going up. You add to the account if you see the word deposit. Now, if you withdraw, that's the opposite. If you withdraw, you take something out of the account. So say you got $300 in there and you want to buy something that costs $100, you're going to withdraw $100 so that you can pay this person the $100 to get what you want. Now you're only going to be left with $200 in the bank. So withdraw means subtract. Deposit means add. Now here's an example of what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, on the test, it's not going to be numbers as easy as 300 and 200. You're going to have dollars and change. You're going to have to add, subtract with decimals. And it's going to be in a story problem, but instead of writing out the whole story, I just gave you the key things that you need. How much you're depositing and how much you're withdrawing. All right, these numbers will be mixed into a paragraph, but they'll all have the word deposit or withdraw next to them. And you're also starting off with a certain amount of money in the bank. So you have a starting amount that's not zero. You've got something in the bank. And then you're either going to add more to it or take some out, depending on whether you're putting a paycheck in maybe or you're buying stuff. So deposit means to add. So you would add this amount to here. Then you would subtract this amount. Then subtract that. Then add this. So that's a lot of back and forth. Adding, subtracting, adding, subtracting. I prefer to combine my deposits together first and combine my withdrawals together first, because then you're just adding numbers together. You don't have to worry about subtracting. So let me show you what I mean. I would make, oops, I thought I erased that. I would make a column for deposits and a column for withdrawals and add those together. So how much am I depositing total? Well, I'm depositing 123.41 plus I'm depositing 243.12. That's my deposit column. So I'm putting that much in the bank. And how much am I withdrawing? What's my withdrawal column? Well, I'm withdrawing two amounts. I'm withdrawing 82.71 and I'm withdrawing 156.58. So just be careful when you're writing these numbers down to keep your decimals lined up. Don't put the 1 in 12 underneath the 3 or somewhere where it doesn't belong. So how much did I deposit total? Well, I'll add these up. 3.5.663. Oh, that was nice. Nothing even had to carry. Didn't have to carry any numbers. All right, let's add how much did I withdraw total. 9.2, carry the 1, that's 8.9. 3, carry the 1, that's 2. So on total, I took out $239.29, but I put in more. I put in $366.53. So I'm putting in, depositing, I'm adding to my account more than what I'm taking out. So in the end, my final answer and how much do I have in the bank is going to be more than what I started with. I started with 241 and I'm putting in more than what I'm taking out. How much more am I putting in? How much more is this number than that number? That's where your subtraction comes into play. If you subtract 239 from 366, that'll tell you how much more in total your bank account is going up. You know, think of small numbers. If I put $10 in my account, but I spent $4, my account's going to go up by $6. 10 minus 4, the amount you deposited minus the amount you withdrew. So that's what we're going to do here, subtract. It's the same concept, they're just bigger numbers than 10 and 4. So if I subtract 366.53 minus 239.29, I have to borrow from the 5, that's a 4, 2, borrow from the 6, that's a 16, so 7, 2, 1. So in total, I am going to deposit at the end of the day 127.24. My bank account is going to go up by that much money because I deposited that much more than what I withdrew. 366.53 is 127.24 more than the 239.29 that I took out. So that's how much more I deposited than I took out. So now all I have to do is add the 127.24 to my original 241.34. So I'll do that. So at the end of the day, I increased my 241.34 by 127.24. So that's 85863. That's how much I have in the bank after all of my deposits and withdrawals. You don't have to make two columns. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it one number at a time. You could, let me write this over to the side more. 241, I forget what it even was. We'll just say 24 because I just erased it, but it doesn't really matter. So that's what we're starting off with in the bank. You could do one number at a time. You could say, first I deposited 123.41, so that's adding. So I'm up to 56463. So I'm up to that amount. Then I withdrew, so I subtract 82.71. So subtract. Borrow from the 6 to make it a 5. Actually, you don't have to borrow. What am I doing here? So just 5 minus 1 is 4. Here, borrow from the 4, make it a 3. So that's a 9, 1, borrow 8, 2. So now I'm down to 281.94. Then I withdraw again. So I subtract again, 156.58. So I have to borrow. That's 6, 3. Have to borrow here. That's 11. So that's a 5, 2, 1. So now I'm down to 125.36. But then I add, finally, at the end, I deposit 243.12. So I'm up to 84863, 368.48. So that must have actually been a 34 cents because I ended up with 50 the first time. So that's another way you could do it. You could just do a running total. You can do one number at a time as they come in the story problem. And maybe that's easier for you. Just as they come, add or subtract it. If it's a deposit, you add it. If it's a subtract, you subtract it. To me, I don't really prefer to do it that way unless I have a calculator, especially a calculator that you type in the number and it shows you the number that you typed in, and it gives you like a running total of what you've done. Because then you can go back and check and see if you made any mistakes. Did I type all these numbers in right? That's real nice if you have a calculator like that. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to use a calculator on this test for some reason. So whatever way you prefer. A running total like this, that's seems like more adding and subtracting back and forth. But hey, if that's what you prefer, do it that way. If you prefer to make your columns where you have your 366 is what you deposited and your 127, I erased it. But you know how I showed you before, to have put these two together, how much did you deposit total, how much did you withdraw total. Then at the end you only had to add the 127 to the 241. A couple different ways to do it. So hopefully one of those ways works for you. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was about temperature. So you might have problems about temperature. And there'll be smaller numbers like -10, 22, 30. So when they're smaller numbers like this, you can use a number line. So that's what this is on the left here, is a number line, but it's going up and down. Normally you're used to seeing number lines going left to right, but thermometers don't go left to right, they go up and down. And I just think number lines are easier to visualize if they're up and down as opposed to left and right anyways, because down is less. I mean, that's definitely a negative number. Up is bigger. That's a positive number. So 0 is in the middle, all your positive numbers are up here, negative numbers are down here. So you have a starting point, just like with the money in the bank, you had a starting point. With temperature, you have a starting point. In this case, it's -10 degrees. So you're way down here, you wake up in the morning, and it's 10 degrees below 0. And then it rose 22 degrees. So that's where the vocabulary comes into this. Some people think that, all right, it was -10 degrees, and then in the afternoon it was 22 degrees. Now, it could be that. You have to read the question. Sometimes it'll go from just telling you how warm it is outside. It was -10, and then it was 22, and they'll ask you how much did it rise to get to 22. In that case, your answer would be 32 degrees. If it went from negative 10 all the way up to 30 to 22, that means it went up 10 to get to 0, and then it went up another 22. 22 and 10 is 32. So if they're just giving you the temperature readings and they ask you how much did the temperature change, the number line can be very helpful because you could always tell how much does it take to get to 0 and then 0 to that number, and then add those two numbers together. But in this case, that's not what they're asking. That's not what they're saying. It was 10 below in the morning. It was not 22 degrees next. It rose 22 degrees. All right, so you went up 22 degrees. You didn't hit the 22 degree mark. You just increased your temperature by 22 degrees. So if you increase, your temperature is going up. So you went up 10 degrees to get to 0. How many degrees left do you have to go? What's 22 minus 10? It's 12. So you got another 12 degrees to go. So you're at 12 degrees above 0. So see how that works with the number line? The tricky part is knowing, are you at 22 or did you rise 22? So you got to read the problems. This test is more of a vocabulary test. Well, it's just as much of a vocabulary test as it is a numbers test. So after you rose 22 from negative 10, that puts you at positive 12. And then from positive 12, you dropped 30. So now we're going back down 30 degrees. And where are we going to end up at? Well, we're at 12. How far do we have to drop to get to 0? 12. And we're dropping 30. So how much more do we have left out of our 30 to drop? Well, we had 30 that we had to drop. We just dropped 12, so we still have 18 left to go. So we got to go another 18 degrees below 0, which puts us at negative 18. So the final answer to this is, what temperature was it at night? It was negative 18. All right, so it was colder than the day before. So feel free to use a number line on problems like this. If you don't want to use the number line, this would be negative 10 plus 22 minus 30 is what you're doing there. Negative 10 plus 22, you're adding 22 to a negative 10. That's enough to get you above 0. How much above 0? 12 above 0. So this becomes, that little triangle, that little arrow there is the answer to these two numbers. Negative 10 plus 22 makes 12. 12 minus 30, if you take away 30 from 12, you're going to be below 0. So 30 minus 12 is 18, but since we're below 0, it's negative 18. So you could just write out the numbers like that if you want. If you're just going up and down, you don't necessarily have to use a number line. But if you're having troubles adding and subtracting numbers that are crossing 0, then maybe this will help for you.